All right, the Wednesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You're probably just getting up, probably a little groggy like I am, because it was a bit of a late night. But it was certainly one that was worth staying up for, as Pitt beats Mississippi State 60-59 to advance to the field of 64, advance to the first round, and finally everyone can stop talking about whether Pitt is actually in the NCAA tournament or not. They were when they played in the playing game last night, and they're in now, playing Iowa State on Friday, 3:10 p.m. in Greensboro, North Carolina. But we have a lot to talk about before we get to that. You know the deal here. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You can subscribe. You can turn on notifications. That way you'll always get an alert whenever we post a new video, whether it's these Morning Pitt videos that we do every day, post-game press conferences, practice press conferences, video from practice, and we go live. We have our live stream tonight, our Panther-Lair show at 8:30 p.m. We did a live stream last night after the game, the Panther-Lair post game. We'll have a live stream on Friday after the Pitt Iowa State game, another Panther-Lair post game right there. And you don't want to miss any of those. So if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn on notifications, we'll send an alert to the phone, to your phone. You'll know when we go live, so you'll never miss anything that we do here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And there's so much to talk about from last night's game. We talked about a lot on the post-game show afterwards. So if you've already watched that, or you were on the live stream last night until about 12:30, which I appreciate very much, because that was a late night, so it was good to have a lot of people hanging out with us. But if you already watched that, you've probably heard me say some of these things before. But the one thing I couldn't get out of my head when the game ended, and I actually had been thinking it for the previous hour or so, it was something I heard in the broadcast. And if you watch the broadcast, I think coming out of halftime, going into halftime, I think John Rothstein interviewed Jeff Capel on the court. Coming out of halftime, he talked to Chris Jans, the Mississippi State head coach. I don't think they aired the conversation, but Rothstein sort of shared the highlights. And the one thing he said that Chris Jans told him was that he had spent halftime telling his players, keep working because, quote, Pitt is going to break. This was Chris Jans' message to his Mississippi State players. Pitt is going to break. And when they had a timeout later in the half, midway through or 3/4 of the way through the second half, Rothstein was listening into the huddle, and they said, John, what did you hear? What did Chris Jans tell his players? He said, he told them, Pitt is going to crack. They're going to break. Just keep chipping away at them, and they are going to break. And it really stood out to me that this was Chris Jans' message to the Mississippi State players. And I thought about it, from halftime on, and when they brought it back up again, I thought about it again, and I thought about it throughout the half, because I wondered myself, is Pitt going to break? This is a close game. Pitt was ahead 35-34 at halftime. It had been a close back and forth game. Mississippi State had a 6-point lead at 14-8. Pitt had a 5-point lead at 21-16. But for the most part, after Mississippi State went up 14-8, Pitt scored 10 unanswered points to go up 18-14. After Pitt went ahead by 5, Mississippi State rattled off a couple of baskets and cut it down to a 2-point lead, and it was never much more than a 2 or 3 point game the rest of the way. And really, that's the truth. It was a 3-point game a few times with the Mississippi State lead around the 11 and 10-minute marks of the second half. And then eventually, we know how it played out. We'll talk about the end of the game in a second. But I kept wondering, is Chris Jans right? Is Pitt going to break? Is that moment coming? And with the game being so close, it didn't feel like either team was really pulling away. So you thought, okay, if that moment comes where Mississippi State goes on a run and they get up 7 or 8 points, is Pitt out of it? Because they hadn't really shown. They had one real run before that. Like I said, it was a 10-0 run. But that was it. They hadn't put together any kind of big run, and they hadn't been able to pull away. They hadn't been able to establish a lead. And so I kept thinking, maybe he's right. When's that moment going to come? When is Pitt going to break? Well, Chris Jans was wrong, because Pitt didn't break in this game. They didn't crack. They didn't wilt. They didn't falter. They didn't fall apart in the face of the adversity and the challenges that they were facing. And there were a lot of challenges in this game. And they faced every single one of them, and they got knocked down. They got knocked down a lot. And they didn't win every battle. But they kept fighting. And when it came down to it, they were 1 point ahead, 60-59 at the end. And it's a huge credit to these players. It's a huge credit to this coaching staff, and it's symbolic of what this team has been all season long. And Jeff Capel has talked about it, and the players have talked about it. Everybody around this program has talked about what this team has been all season long, and how they've come together, and how they've bonded, and how even how they bonded through adversity. The adversity of starting the season 1-3 with those losses that they took, getting blown out by West Virginia and Michigan, and blowing a game against VCU. How that experience led them to being tighter, led them to bonding together, and learning how to fight through adversity together. And it served them. It served them very, very well throughout December, throughout January, throughout February. And they didn't win every game in there. They had games that were bad matchups. They had games where they just kind of blew it. They blew it against Clemson. They had a bad matchup against Duke. They had a bad matchup against Notre Dame. They blew it against Florida State. They didn't win every game, but they won a whole lot of them. And in most of those cases, they won because they were able to face down the adversity and overcome it. And so when they went into the NCAA Tournament game last night, the first 4 game against Mississippi State and Dayton, they were a team that had been through adversity, that had been through battles, that had fought to the end of games and emerged victorious with a last-minute victory, a last 30 seconds victory, a last 20 seconds victory, or in the case of last night, a last 10-second victory. They knew how to hold on. They knew how to fight. They knew how to battle and handle those challenges and that adversity. And I think it served them because there was no shortage of adversity in last night's game. Federico out for the game. And this was a game where they were playing a team whose best player, biggest weapon, is their center. And if ever there was a game you were going to need Federico for, it was that one. And it was a matchup that could have been maybe a decent one for Federico, given that Tolu Smith, the Mississippi State center, is not a three-point shooting center. He's not a guy who's going to drag you out to the three-point line. And if you went out there, you didn't have to go with him. You could just leave him out there. It's fine. You didn't need to defend him out to the three-point line or even the free throw line. And so it was kind of a good matchup for Federico. I think Jeff Capel told the TV crew that he compared Tolu Smith to Armando Bacot. And the last time Pitt played North Carolina, I thought Federico did a pretty good job against Bacot. So it could have been a decent matchup. But the reality is, even in a decent matchup, Federico was probably going to give up a bunch of points and a bunch of rebounds to Tolu Smith. Pitt was always going to lose the rebounding battle to this team. It was highly unlikely that they were going to out-rebound Mississippi State or be competitive on the boards. And that was with Federico. You take him out of the mix, and it was going to be a bloodbath. And that was ultimately what happened. Because Mississippi State, while they're not very good offensively, the worst three-point shooting team in the country, they're very good on defense, and they're very good at rebounding. And both of those things were on display. I don't think Mississippi State had an uncharacteristically bad game on defense, and I don't think they had an uncharacteristically bad game rebounding. They actually played really well defensively, and they rebounded really well. What Pitt did, and what Pitt did better than Mississippi State, was persevere. They didn't out-rebound them. They didn't play better defense. They played pretty good defense, but not better defense, I would say. But they persevered. They handled the adversity better. They were able to come down the stretch and make the big plays to win the game. And that's not to say that Mississippi State wasn't, because, it was 52-51. Mississippi State was leading with 6 minutes to go. And Pitt went on a 7-0 run to take a 58-52 lead with 3 minutes left to play, capped by that long three-pointer by Blake Hinson. And he thought, okay, they've finally created a little separation. They might be able to pull away in this game, and they might just be able to win it. They're up by 6 with 3 minutes to play. Well, 2.5 minutes later, Mississippi State's ahead again on their own 7-0 run, with Smith scoring a couple baskets and DJ Jeffries hitting a 3. And so Pitt was able to go on a run, take a lead, but then Mississippi State answered with a run of its own. And both teams basically had 2 runs each in this game. 2 in the first half, or one each in the first half, 1 each in the second half. And there it is with 30 seconds left to go. Mississippi State's up by 1, 59-58. And Pitt gets the play it needs from the guy who has made the plays all year long, Jamarius Burton. Pull-up jumper, his shot, easy as pie. And this is after Burton played just 11 minutes in the first half, I think. 8 minutes in the second half. Missed a lot of time due to foul trouble. And he comes in. And, I mean, he played the final 5:49 of the game, so it's not like he came off the bench and made the game-winning basket. But he stepped up when the team needed him the most and made the big play. And this team's veteran guards led the way. Burton made the game winner. Nike Sabandi had a couple fast break baskets and hit a 3. And Nelly Cummings. Nelly Cummings willed this team to victory, particularly with Jamarius Burton out due to foul trouble. Nelly Cummings took over and led this team to victory. He made so many big plays, so many take over the game plays that I wrote in my staff picks on Panther-Lair.com when I made my prediction for the game yesterday. I predicted that Cummings would draw on his experience playing in the NCAA tournament, and that would be an advantage for Pitt, and he would help lead the team. You say things like that, and you're like, well, we'll see if it actually even matters. Well, I think it mattered yesterday. I think it mattered last night. I think Cummings was able to draw on his experience in the NCAA tournament. I think he knows what it takes to play in that kind of setting and knows what it takes to win in that kind of. He's never won in that kind of setting, but he knows he has seen teams win, and he's been in games where he's seen what the other team had to do to emerge victorious. And he was willing to do those things for his team last night. And then Guillermo Diaz Graham. I mean, what can you say about this guy? 37 minutes, played every minute in the second half. 17 minutes in the first half, 20 in the second. And, I mean, you call it what it is. He got his butt kicked. I mean, every which way, but lose. I mean, he got his butt kicked up and down the court. Both ends, offense and defense, he got knocked around physically, and it was really the first time all season where I felt like Guillermo, I don't know what the right word for it. I don't want to say looked scared, but it looked like it was the first time all season where I felt like I watched him play, and he looked like a guy who was just getting worn down by the physical beating he was taking. And it's not like this was the first time he took a physical beating. He got beat up all season. But last night's game was especially physical. And I think Mississippi State played really physical against Pitt. And that goes for everybody on the team, not just Guillermo Diaz Graham. But he took the brunt of it. And I didn't think he was going to quit. He didn't have an option to quit. He couldn't be a liability on the court, and he couldn't be more of a liability than his physical attributes allow him to be. He couldn't also start hanging his head and giving lackluster effort. But it was a tough matchup for him, and he was taking a beating, and he was a liability on the court at times. I don't think there's any question. So it's only fitting, and it's perfect that when Smith goes for a basket with 5 or 6 seconds left in the game, try and score a game winner, Guillermo comes up with a block and blocks Tolu Smith, the best player on the team, presumably the best player on the court, or expected to be the best player on the court, and Guillermo blocks the ball out of bounds to send that shot away. And now, of course, the final 2.7 seconds were especially dicey when Mississippi State got an open look from 3 and almost put in the tip in. But I'm not going to sit and I mean, you could say Pitt got a little lucky. Jeff Capel said they had some luck. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna say they got lucky here, because even if you want to say in the last 2.7 seconds they got lucky, I would counter by saying that for 59 minutes, or no, not 59 minutes, 19 minutes and 57.3 seconds, they played their tails off and worked really, really hard to win this game. And now every player on this team can say they've won an NCAA tournament game. They're going to go to a first 4 site in Greensboro, a place they know well. And they're going to play an Iowa State team that seems ripe for an upset with a chance to advance to the second round, presumably to face Xavier for a chance to go to the Sweet 16. And I don't know if they're going to beat Iowa State. I think they've got a really good chance of doing it. If they do, I don't know if they're going to beat Xavier. But I do think this team, time and time again, has shown itself to be resilient, has shown itself to be able to stare down adversity and face just about any challenge that comes across its path. And there will be games that they run into. There have been games that they run into where the matchups are just bad. But if the matchups are even somewhat manageable, we know this team can handle the adversity of a game. And so if Iowa State doesn't have the kind of matchups that really kind of expose Pitt, like we saw with Duke or Notre Dame or whoever, there's no reason they can't win that game and then have a real shot at making the Sweet 16. It's remarkable. But it's just one more step of success in what's been a really, really good Pitt basketball season. And I think as much as you've enjoyed it so far, I got to think last night was not the icing on the cake, because that sounds sort of final, but it sure was another step in the right direction and just one more thing to enjoy with this team this season. So credit to the players, credit to the coaches, congratulations to all of them. I thought they had a great plan for Tolu Smith, not being too concerned about the shooting from Mississippi State's other players. They pretty much just honed in on Smith and made life as difficult for him as possible. He finished with 13 points and 8 rebounds, which is kind of a quiet night for him. As Avery Johnson said, he's a walking double-double. Well, he wasn't last night. He only had 8 boards. So that walking double-double is going to walk back to Starkville, I guess. But credit to those guys. Credit to the players and the coaches. Congratulations to them. Congratulations to you, Pitt fans. You've waited a long time to watch Pitt win an NCAA tournament game. And now you have the biggest challenge. You got to fill out a bracket that has Pitt in it. And I think if any of us remember what it was like over the last 20 years, it's not easy to fill out a bracket with the team you watch all the time. It can be a little bit tricky because you start talking yourself into it. So good luck over the next few days deciding how far you're going to take Pitt in the NCAA tournament. It will inevitably be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 rounds farther than you should, but that's kind of the fun of it. So thanks for tuning in this morning. Thanks everybody who watched the live stream last night. We really appreciate it during the post-game show. It was a lot of fun. We'll do that again on Friday after Pitt's game against Iowa State. We'll have another live stream. We'll have the Panther-Lair post-game show, and then we'll have one tonight. We'll have a live stream tonight where we'll talk about this game. We'll talk about Iowa State. We'll talk about Pitt football because they started spring camp yesterday. We got a lot to talk about on the Panther-Lair show tonight. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of our live streams or any of the videos we post here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I know you're a little bit tired today. I'm a little bit tired today. We're all going to be a little bit slow, but that's why we make those afternoon pots of coffee, right? So enjoy the day. Have a good one. We will talk to you tonight for the live Panther-Lair show, and then we'll be back again tomorrow morning for another Morning Pitt right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.